What are some of the best moments I have read across all my years of reading fanfiction? This is something that honestly came up all of a sudden. What for, the context is, I'm actually currently making my way through Professor Arc 1 and 2, so I can review Professor Arc 2, and I asked some of my friends if they can actually give me an idea, just as a random video, to pass the time. More or less like a placeholder video. One of my friends actually suggested, why not do some of the best, well, not so much the best, this person actually said some of the worst fanfictions ideas you've seen across your chat, across reading. Thought that's actually not a bad idea. But I figured if I'm going to do the worst ones, I'm going to do the best ones as well. So I have 5 random moments across the very, very long time I have read fanfiction. I read fanfiction for, at this point, 13 years straight. And I actually have a lot of fun digging through and having a lot of fun seeing like all these interesting ideas and moments you see across fanfiction. So I will say, before I actually get started with these moments, there is going to be one rule. These are, and that is no characters. In essence, if I do a character, then I have to actually do an entire part on the character, and that's actually kind of cheating. Same thing where if I pick an entire chapter. So, for instance, if I had to pick, like, say, the final battle of Megami no Hanabira, which is, and honestly, that final battle is really, really well written. It's one of the best fights I've ever seen in any fanfiction ever. The problem is, it takes like 90% of the last chapter. Literally 90%. Like, there's literally just the 90% is just the entire fight, and then the last 10% is just finishing the storyline with, like, say, with them meeting Satan and them turning off the machine and everyone going back to normal. But it feels like it's similar to the characters. It feels like cheating, and I think that would be unfair if I just picked a chapter itself, while whether instead of picking an individual moment that I just personally liked. Just know, these are just moments that I really liked, and I'm going to be dissecting them, why I liked them, how they were set up, and and how they were handled. For this one, if I continue doing something like this, 2 of the moments are actually in fanfictions that are technically cheating. I didn't review one of them, and one of them is kind of in a purgatory sort of state. I'll explain that when I get to those two. Those 2 are going to be in the last 2. And I actually want to hear your thoughts. Like, one, should I continue with this once I do the worst one as well? And 2, any individual moments that you really, really like. And to be fair, if you write fan fiction, don't pick a moment from your own story. Pick a moment from someone else's story. I think that's at least fair. So let's just ignore Ryzen and Junko dueling it out. Let's start with the first moment, and that is from Seven Color Puppeteer in the Land of Fire by Shirion. This is the Naruto Toho fanfiction that I actually really liked, and I do remember my big complaint is the fact it's not a sequel. That kind of tells you how good this story was, despite how short it is. But for context, if you ever actually watched that review, in this story, I'm gassy. Excuse me. In this story, Alice Margatroyd from the Toho Project, for those who don't know who she is, she's basically a kind of reclusive puppeteer. Her whole thing is she wants to bring puppets to life. She's kind of a character that's kind of this franchise kind of forgotten over time. She appeared heavily in like around the time she debuted, and then after like I think Subterranean Animism, she just disappeared. And I think she only had like one appearance after that in like one of the mangas. That's fine. She somehow gets stuck in Konoha. She doesn't know how she gets there. She just randomly shows up. It's like, okay, it's probably Yukari just messing around with portals again. And she decides to plan out a whole sequence to try and get back home, involving drilling boundaries and to poke a hole and go home. However, she needed the money and the materials, so she sets up she builds a little puppet shop in Konoha, where she just kind of is her trying to do her studying while also selling puppets in order to make enough money to do her research. Along the way, she does befriend Naruto, and she basically teaches him how to do Damaku, which is bullet hell and all that stuff. And they kind of have a little friendship thing going on, like a mother son sort of deal. This moment takes place in chapter 4. And I will say, I completely forgot. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below. And finally, all these are my opinion. And also, there will be spoilers. If you're upset about spoilers, that's your own fault. So back to this. So this story starts with, this part of the story starts with Naruto kind of barging in to Alice's home. And Alice is, she's kind of worried because one of the things that, as a sort of friendship, Alice gave Naruto a doll. And Naruto decided to name the doll Sakura after Sakura Haruno. And, he starts playing with it. He just, dolls are Alice's thing. So it's like, it makes sense why Alice would just, oh, you're a friend. I'm going to give you this doll as a token of friendship. The doll wants to be friends with you. And Naruto, he likes the doll. He wants to be with the doll. For context, Naruto started getting bullied for having the dolls. There's actually a side little chapter that actually shows him like the whole scene in the manga and anime where they introduce themselves to Kakashi. And this actually shows a version of that, but like Naruto, he talks about Damaku and he shows the dolls off and he shows Sakura off and then Sakura right next to him. It's like he's starting freaking out. It's kind of a creep. But that's all the background you need on that. A random boy in this part of the story decides to break Naruto's doll, basically break Sakura. And Alice, she doesn't really see anything wrong with that until Naruto tells her, it's like, oh, they broke Sakura, and Naruto shows her the doll, and then Alice just gets like, okay then, and just start cracking her knuckles. Not really. I'm gonna be doing a lot of hyperbole and a lot of joking stuff. And mostly she just gets really upset over the fact that a doll, someone broke one of her dolls. She's very protective of the dolls. That's kind of her thing. And then you find like part of her Toho thing is like she fills her dolls with like explosives and makes them. Yeah, that's fine. So what happens is the boys are actually chasing Naruto because they want to keep bullying him, and Naruto went to Alice to kind of act as like the mother. He sees her as a mother figure at this point, as a friend / mother figure. And so Alice decides, I'm going to deal with it. So what she does is, she walks outside with the express purpose of confronting these boys, and they're outside the store. And so while she's talking to them, she actually orders her puppets because she can actually manually control them through magic, through like magic like strings. Like think of like, I don't know, like Sasori, or what's the name of the Scar's brother, the makeup guy, Konkuro. There it is. I almost says Kaneko because I have Kaneko Yasuka on the ring. So she basically orders all of the dolls to slowly surround them, and she makes it very clear that they're starting to surround them. There's 3 boys. The 2 boys besides the main bully are like actually noticing it, but the bully is kind of like tunnel vision onto trying to humiliate Naruto. And so the 2 side boys, they kind of freak out once she basically orders the dolls to just try and jump them. They get out. They manage to capture the main bully and kind of just drag him on the ground. In essence, what happened after is such a great moment. So she basically uses her magic to take control of Sakura. And basically does this whole song and dance about like controlling Sakura to kind of make Alice seem like she's kind of crazy, because that's kind of like Alice's thing. She actually uses the talk. She believes that talking to the dolls will actually give them like sentience and stuff like that. So she kind of does that a lot. Alice starts, pretending to start talking to Sakura about what happened, and it's like, well, we have the person here who bullied you. What do you think we should do? And then she actually mimes Sakura to actually kind of hurt the boy, and it's such an amazing scene. Like you can actually tell, like, it's Alice is basically doing this as a show, not even trying to scare him, but just to spook him for not only what he did to Naruto, but also what he did to Sakura. And it's this big whole song and dance where you have Sakura pretending to like be completely hurt because Sakura's missing like an arm, and so they basically have like the dolls, start holding down his arm, and Alice makes like mimes like a little show to pretend to break it, and it's like, no, 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 don't do that. That's too far. And then Sakura has like mentions like, oh yeah, he ruined my hair, so it's like, okay, brings up a doll with a sharp instrument, sicks the doll on him, manages to lop off a piece of his hair, and then lets him go, and then he runs off. And I think that is such an amazing, everything from the setup to the execution of telling you exactly the fact that Alice is more or less just a recluse. That's something that's kind of told throughout the rest of the story. She just wants to be alone, and she's only really selling the dolls more out of convenience to be able to advance her research and get out. But the scene perfectly encapsulates that despite the fact Alice is very reclusive, she's still a yokai, and she's still very powerful. And this kind of just hammers on the point that you should still be afraid of her, which also kind of segues to the rest of the story, where like Konoha and the Hokage actually kind of noticed, like they were putting up with her because she wasn't really doing anything, but then she started once they noticed that he technically attacked someone, it's like, all right, go into the bingo books, and now they just basically consider her an enemy. And it's such a well done executed scene. There's not really much in the way of like setup or thematic reason or anything deeper than that. What you see is what you get, and I think it's really well done. So, what is the second moment is from Alice Reflections of Madness. I really love this story. This is basically a retelling of American McGee's Alice Madness Returns. I think this is a really well done. This is actually in the Better Off Alone tier, which kind of tells you the level of quality it has. Hold on. I'm actually kind of curious. Is he worked on the third story? No. Third story is completely dead. Hold on. Is this person... no. Kind of sad. What the... yes. No idea why I did that. Okay, back to Alice. So for those... Okay. So this one actually starts to require some context, specifically around the events of Madness Returns. So, for context of this specific scene, this takes place at the part where Alice, over the revelations of her actions, have caused her to basically, her mind broke. And for context for that is, this is going to be very disturbing, so warning. Her psychologist, Angus Bumpy, has been mentally brainwashing all the kids he's been taking care of mentally because he's a therapist and psychologist, and draining them of their emotions so that way he can sell them as child prostitutes. And he was planning on doing the same thing to Alice because of the simple fact Alice was the one remaining a chink in his armor, because as we find out throughout Madness Returns, he raped her sister, and then framed the murder of her sister and also her parents under the pretense of, a cat just knocking over the line and setting everything on fire, which not only causes the original Alice, American McGee's Alice, but also Madness Returns, that one specific incident, and caused Wonderland to be created. And so Bumby is mentally trying to wear down Alice, specifically to mentally break her, to get rid of the sole person who can basically bring down his entire empire, his entire prostitution empire. However, he hit a very big snag in regards to Wonderland because Wonderland allowed her to have a lot of resilience, and so that led to the events of this story and also the game, where instead of trying to break Alice's psyche directly, he basically started attacking Wonderland and slowly corrupting it over the course of the therapy sessions, and that led to the events. The reason Alice's mind breaks is because she finally realizes, due to going to the ruins of Queensland and meeting the Queen of Hearts, that she basically was somewhat complicit in Bumby's plans, because she was noticing the fact that he was literally prostituting all the children and she did nothing. And that broke her mind, the fact that she was allowing not only that to happen, but the fact that the person who was doing it murdered her family and raped her sister. And of course, Bumby's a horrible, disgusting person. That's the whole point. This version of events kind of expands on the psychological aspect of the game, because only like a small portion of the game is centered in London, while in this retelling, more emphasis is placed on Alice's interactions in Wonderland. I almost said Lunderland, because that's actually what happened at the end of American McGee's Madness Returns, because she somehow gets Wonderland mixed with London so that we can create Lunderland. Mixing, both expanding upon the Wonderland areas, but also massively expanding on the London areas, and this was part of it. So this man, Dr. Hieronymus Q. Wilson, who was actually Alice's therapist, who's kind of the main reason why Alice was able to be cured and kind of be able to stay sane between the original game and Madness Returns. He supposedly comes out of retirement, because the sequel reveals that he actually went into retirement because Alice was just a piece of work, and he put so much work into her, and he's kind of like, she's gonna be like my magnum opus. Like, I helped this one girl as like a last thing, so I'm gonna retire and peace off. He comes out of retirement because he finds out that Alice mentally broke. And between this part, and also it switches between her time in the asylum and also basically her wandering around like the ruins of Wonderland itself. Like, at this point, the only part that was still alive was the dollhouse, and everything was just kind of falling apart. But we have to go all the way down here. Oh yeah, this chapter is also interspersed with like flashbacks to when Alice as a kid kind of made, and how the family got acquainted with Dr. Bumby and all that. But we're gonna need to let's see, where is it? It's farther. Yeah, here it is. So this part has Dr. Wilson deciding to play a little psychology game with Alice, because he's trying to figure out what caused the psychotic break. At first, he thought, she pushed someone. She tried to commit suicide by jumping into the water. However, Alice rebuffs that, saying that there are several witnesses saw someone push me into the water and tried to murder me. And he's like, all right, I'll let that go. If there's actual witnesses, we'll see how that goes. And he decides that he needs to find out what caused Alice to come back to the asylum. So he plays a game called there's not really any game. It's just basically he says one word and Alice responds with this first word that comes into her mind. Kind of like a feedback loop sort of thing. And we get like this really, really well done moment where uh, Doctor Wilson. I'm just calling Wilson, and we got this really cool back and forth between Alice and uh, Wilson over this mind game, with the whole point of Wilson trying to find out what happened. So it's like sky, bird, sky, cat, friend because of the Cheshire Cat, heart, love, brain, broken, courage, truth. In essence, Alice also kind of picking up on the whole thing and trying to use the game to kind of lead him to where she wants him to go and find out the truth. Toys, weapons. That's referencing all the weapons that you actually get throughout the game, because they're all, for the most part, they're toys. So like you have the hobby horse, you have the dot, and also all the weapons in the original American McGee's Alice are all toys, except with the exception of the Vorpal blade. So you have dice, you have jacks, you have the 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 cricket bat, and even like a little wand. It's a reference to that. Queen, cow, referencing the Queen of Hearts. Fire, death, referencing her family. Family, murder, which at this point Alice now knows that it wasn't an incidental murder or even an accident. It was deliberate murder. And we see at this point like Wilson just completely flabbergasted, like trying to figure out, like, hold on, something. She's trying to tell me something. He's actually picking up on the clues Alice is kind of telling him. So he says London, hell, referencing the fact that Bumby has completely turned London into hell for her. And then he goes for the jugular by saying Wonderland. And Alice shuts down. And she gets deer in the headlights. And so Wilson asks her, Alice, dear, Wonderland. And she starts breaking down, and then ruined, innocence, stolen, doctor, liar, referencing the fact that Bumby's been lying to everyone, children, victims, doll, children, referencing the fact that that Bumby's child prostitution name, or more accurately, his Wonderland version is actually called the Doll Maker, who basically turns children into his little dolls. It's actually a really clever symbolic meaning behind this thing. I actually come back to this moment from time to time because of just how well written it is. And even Alice repeats herself like children. And then he realizes like something. Okay, so something's connecting. Like I gotta figure out. I need to know. But there's one thing, because of course we actually get the context throughout the rest of this chapter that Alice has something mumbles something about a train. So he decides to take a risk. Since she was mentioning the train in reference, it's talking about the Infernal Train, which was the thing that Bumby was actually using to destroy Wonderland inside Alice's psyche. He basically got the train built and was running over and destroying everything. So Wilson tells Alice one last word. Train. And Alice breaks. And Alice starts, to mumble to herself. Wilson kind of starts getting despondent over the fact that he kind of pushed too hard. He starts standing up and he starts leaving the room. And right before he leaves the room, Alice starts saying the nursery rhyme that was actually a key word phrase throughout not only the story but also the game. The train is coming with its shiny cars, so with comfy seats and wheels of stars. So hush, you little ones, have no fear. The man in the moon is the engineer, which was Bumby's catchphrase. That's basically how Bumby described his process and how he saw himself as the engineer to kind of guide you to forgetting all those horrible memories, while also subtly telling you that he's basically gonna just mind fuck you and basically shatter your mind so he can be a little doll in his mind. And once Wilson hears that, it connects, and he realizes that Bumby has something to do with this, and it actually leads to the climax where Wilson actually manages to get like a couple more therapy sessions in the, but in actuality getting her information so that way they can nail Bumby, which leads to the climax, which leads to Alice assaulting the dollhouse and also trying to take the fight not only to Bumby in London but also the doll maker in Wonderland. It's this one moment just ties together the entire climax into a very, very well crafted, well thematic story. And I honestly have no complaints on this. It's just I still think that this is one of the best fan fictions I've ever read. And it's moments like this that just makes me realize how good this story was. Like this one moment is such a beautifully dark crafted realization for like that. The end is coming. It's beautiful. So number 3 is from Professor Ark. Now, this is kind of the reason why I want to do the best first, because I wanted to talk about this moment. Because this one actually kind of needs some context. Not as much as the next two are going to have, because the next two are going to have a lot more context. And especially the last one where I have to actually kind of bridge everything together. But, for those of you who know, in Professor Ark, John Ark basically wants to become a hunter. However, he goes to Roman Torchwick to basically forge his documents, and Roman screws the pooch and does too good a job, which leads to John becoming a teacher or professor instead. In this part of the story, he is trying to solve a interpersonal issue because since John's not a student anymore, so Team Juniper had to be changed, and instead of like leaving a 3-piece team, the author put Velvet Scarlatina, got her injured, so that way she's away from Team Coffee, and kind of held her back a year to recover. So she joins Lee Ren, Pyrrha Nikos, and Nora Valkyrie, and becomes Team Raven. However, it's very dysfunctional because Nora and Ren kind of do their own thing, and Pyrrha is too kind to try and press the issue of wanting to be friends with Velvet, and Velvet really gives no fuck about them. She wants to be with her team Coffee. This leads to kind of a recurring a theme where John is trying his best to try at least fit in and kind of keep the lies alive, and he feels kind of shamed that he couldn't fix this issue despite his, he kept putting like band-aids. Like when Pyrrha asked him, he's like, I need help with this, like just talk to, why don't you be friends with Ruby, because she's kind of lonely, and Pyrrha and Ruby kind of become friends. So this part of the story takes place after the dance in season 2, where they go on their first official mission. John leads the team to a place called Missenwood, which is where Nora and Ren grew up. What happened was there was a string of disappearances, there's murder victims, and they suspect a Grimm to be there. So they go there, they meet Crow and Tai Lang, I think Ruby and Yang's father is named, who basically wants to be like Papa Wolf and try to protect Ruby and Yang from who they thought was like, oh, he's gonna be, oh, that John person, he's gonna be. I was like, oh, he's just a normal dude. Carry on. And we got this whole little mini arc where John is trying to figure out some way to kind of at least make the team come together, even if they don't like each other. At least try and make them at least friendly toward each other, because Velvet has been giving the cold shoulder to everyone, literally everyone, throughout the rest of the story. So they come to here. They kind of talk. None of the other people living in the town really want anything to do with the group. Then they go to a mortician named Marcus, who is very, very aroused by Velvet because she's a rabbit girl, faunus. You get the idea. And along the way, they find, like, there's some developments. Tai Lang kind of leaves because Yang gets hurt during the whole Mountain Glen thing. And John and Velvet, they kind of talk, but Velvet kind of gets pushes herself away because she kind of, she's projecting all of her hatred and misery over being left behind and not being able to be with Team Coffee onto Nora, onto Ren. Nope, not Nora and Ren, onto Pyrrha and onto John. It's a very tense situation. And then Neo shows up because Neo's kind of like the troll who kind of like likes to annoy John in the story. She's like constantly like, yes, what can I do to him? But she doesn't actually talk because it's Neo. She's best girl. She has best Ruby girl. And then while they're trying to figure out what the hell's going on, they get attacked by the entire village under orders by the mayor, because there was another murder, there was a sword slash, and the mayor suspects all these hunters who were staying there, especially since the murder happened around Tai Ling leaving. So they kind of thought the same thing. Spoiler: it was it was Marcus. And then we get a very, very creepy scene where it turns out Marcus, you think that there's Marcus drugs Velvet, knocks out Pyrrha, ties them both up while everyone's distracted by the villagers, and he reveals his plan that he wants to bring equality and evolution between humans and faunuses. So what his whole scheme has been about is he kidnaps people, specifically faunuses, and it was actually foreshadowed by the fact that one of the bodies found had missing lumps on top of their head. Spoiler, it was ears. He cuts off the ears, and he wanted to attach them to other people to kind of make Frankenstein-y faunuses. And Velvet kind of realizes the fact that a lot of this was done by the fact that, she starts caring about Pyrrha, and she realizes the fact that Pyrrha is completely knocked out. Marcus is going to use Pyrrha as a test subject because she has aura. It's like, well, I kept trying all these different ways, opening up the tops of the head, putting the ears in, they get infected or something's going wrong. I even tried kids because, kids like to grow. When they grow, they heal faster. Yeah, that didn't work. But then I thought, aura. Aura can heal any injury specifically fast. And so he used Pyrrha as the body that he's going to attach the ears to. And he's going to use Velvet as sort of like the control to kind of know what he needs to do to get everything right. Pyre starts waking up. He realizes and starts using her polarity powers to kind of keep the doctor away. And Velvet is like across from it, kind of at least help her. And Pyrrha doesn't know what's going on. So what the doctor is, he tries the scalpel, doesn't work. He tries the needle to sedate Pyrrha, needle snaps. So he does like, all right, I tried being a nice guy. Basically, comes in with a board and basically takes Pyrrha's head and just dumps it in the water, drowning her. And now Velvet is freaking out and trying to get out, but then she notices the fact that Velvet is using her polarity powers to kind of push a saw towards Velvet. So like even while she's trying to save, she doesn't. It kind of shows Pyra's nature of a very kind and giving woman, and that actually kind of causes Velvet to kind of go through this realization that she treated Pyrrha like a jerk, like a jackass, like, and the fact that now she wants to try and earn Pyrrha's forgiveness. So she actually, she kind of crawls on the door, grabs the saw, especially when it starts and manages to start cutting, but then Pyrrha passes out from partial drowning. Velvet breaks it, and the ore is protecting her hand, but she slowly starts cutting it. The doctor notices. However, she also notices the fact that John and Neo's important, know where this and Crow know that the mortician's been behind it. Basically, Crow and John confront the mayor, and they basically find out the truth. It's like, oh shit, he put us for a fool. So the doctor freaks out, especially once Velvet, manages to get free, and she's left with a choice: chase after the doctor or save Pyrrha. She basically, starts doing CPR and trying to save Pyrrha, and mentally realizing what a jerk she's been. That's not the moment, though. The moment is what happened afterwards. The doctor goes to his office. He's like, all right, time, okay. Medicine Wood's not working out. Time to go to a new town. I start new. He hears something. He lifts up a gun and sees that Neo and John are actually in the office. Basically, at this point, Neo's semblance was never really defined. That's actually something I've actually been noticing a lot in this story, coming through it, reading again. The author really likes retconning stuff mid-story instead of going back and fixing it. So at this point in time, Neo's semblance was teleportation, and she basically teleported him and herself into the office. The doctor starts panicking, pointing the gun towards each of them, and Neo ultimately decides to point to John. John basically is like, I'm completely shocked that you didn't think that you thought I was more dangerous. Like, and then Neo grabs the doctor, slams him on the door, grabs the gun, which his hand is still on, places her finger on it, points it at his head, and starts about to pull the trigger. And the doctor starts freaking, and starts begging for forgiveness. It's like, Neo, don't do that. And everyone starts calming down. Neo starts listening up on the trigger, and then I gotta actually go down. Let me actually. Let's see. Where is it? Where is it? There it is. The girl huffed and thought he could let her out. He could hear her let out a sigh of frustration. And then she pulls it, and then she makes him pull the trigger anyway. That is dark. I like this part because of the setup behind the whole thing, because you have the fact that we finally get some actual character development from Velvet. And I'm just, as an aside, the fact that Kohler keeps using Velvet but never actually makes her a main character or a story that focuses on her, it's kind of weird. Like, she's always like she's like, it's like, oh, it's John, Team Juniper, and Team Ruby, and then Velvet's just kind of in the background, like with them as well as like a minor character. It's really weird. Just do something with Velvet. She's a poor bunny girl. She needs love. She needs all the love she can get. This moment is a comedy story, and even before this moment happens and after this moment happens, it doesn't really get dark from the unexpected revelation that his whole motive was a sort of evolution sort of deal to Velvet kind of realizing how much of a jerk she was, and then capstone by Neo looking like she might just let the guy go and then pulling the trigger anyway because she's Neo. If she's not doing something sadistic, that ain't Neo. It's a really well branched scene. Granted, it only works in the context of this little arc. In the context of the rest of the story, nothing really comes out of it besides the fact that Velvet now actually is more comfortable with hanging out with Pyrrha. It does lead to playing a part in the climax because in canon, Emerald Susarai has the power of illusions and kind of slightly brainwashes Pyrrha to kill Penny Palladina. But in this story, Velvet, since Velvet's part of the whole thing, she kind of notices what might be going on, and she kind of gets John to help kind of prevent that incident from happening. But then Cinder kind of plays like speed chess and stuff like that, and kind of gets the result she wants anyway. Though it kind of starts off the climax a bit, but yeah, I think this entire sequence with Velvet and saving and Doctor getting his just desserts. I think it was well done. It's a little basic. Like I said, this isn't really a comedy story, so having a dark moment like this is like really, honestly, shocking, but was well done overall. I have nothing more to say about the story. So, let's get to number 4. And that is, in this story, Hercules and the Modern Girl. So, this is where things are going to get weird, because I reviewed Hercules and the Modern Girl seasons 1, 2, and 3. And this moment comes from the very end of season 2. Now, if you're actually noticing, seasons 1, 2, and 3 are no longer gone. She's basically rewriting the entire thing as one story. And she didn't... God damn it, I hate when that does that. And she's kind of redoing the whole thing. And it's kind of causing problems because now I can't actually show the scene that I want to show. So, that kind of presents a very big problem. So, let's at least talk about the story before I get to the moment. So, this is what I would like to call a isekai story, wherein someone from the real world kind of gets sucked into the medium of their choice, whether it be like anime or a manga. In this case, a girl by the name of Natalie kind of gets sucked into the Hercules, not the movie, but the TV show. And she kind of has to get dragged into the whole events of a lot of the episodes relating to the Hercules TV show. However, I think this isekai story does things a lot differently from a lot of the other isekai stories that are done. Isekai stories tend to just have the normal plot, and then the girl just kind of gets bored and just wants... Usually a girl falls in love with one of the characters, and then interferes with like the story in some way, usually either by being cute or fall in love with one of the characters, like I want you to die or something like that. This story is actually different because it actually used that specific idea as a crucial plot point. Because one, Natalie has seen the movie, but she doesn't even know anything about the TV show. And so when she gets to the underworld, she runs into Hades. Hades gives her the whole hoopla sort of thing. Talks to the Fates. The Fates basically tell him to his face, she's from the real world, and to her, we're fictional characters. Which creates the core conflict of this entire story. When the Fates tell Natalie, you are here for a specific purpose, to either change the events of the movie, and basically they give her two choices. You can either, one, side with Hades. This will cause you to change the events of the actual Disney movie, have Hades win, but you'll stay here. But if you do this, you'll stay here forever. But you could also side with Hercules. Basically, what happens in the movie, and you can go home. Originally, Natty's fine. I'll fine. I'll just go home. Yeah. However, over the course of the story, she starts getting a conflict of interest when she actually starts getting feelings not only for Hercules but also Hades, and that causes a big sense of conflict within the entire story because now she's split on whether or not she actually wants to stay. Because if she stays, she technically has to let Hades take over Olympus or go home. And a lot of the big plot of the story is the conflict of her allegiances constantly shifting. I think that's a well done crafted story. It's also a really fun story overall. But this part of the story actually takes place at the end of season two, which has not happened in the revisions. So it's the end. Now, my thoughts of Hercules and the Wild Girl season two was that it was very, very dull because it focused a lot on the Icarus episodes, and there was a lot of. It was very dull and uninteresting. It came off very much as filler. Season one was very well done. Season three was very well done, but season two kind of always felt like the awkward one because it just felt like the author was spinning the wheels of the entire season, and that kind of caused a lot of problems because nothing was really progressing, and even everything was stagnating to the point where I was like, okay, Natalie is starting like at risk of becoming a Mary Sue. She doesn't become a Mary Sue. Because of how everything was played out, it kind of starts to look like that. She doesn't become it. That's just how it looks. At the end of season two, she's going home, and she gets to the entrance in the forest to the underworld, where she gets confronted by Cassandra, the Oracle. Cassandra has been suspecting something weird's been going on with Natalie for a while, and so she decided on this day that she's gonna follow her. And she finds out that Natalie was shacking with Hades. She confronts Natalie. They start a massive argument because Cassandra is basically accusing Natalie of betraying not only her trust, but also Icarus and Hercules' trust. However, Natalie, at least admits the fact that what she's doing is betraying trust, but she has a very good reason. It's a massive argument that carries on like a significant part of the chapter. It doesn't cover the entire episode because it's like the chapters are singled by episodes, like a beginning part of the episode, middle part of the episode, end of the episode, and this one kind of takes place as like an epilogue to kind of bridge the gap between the previous episode and last episode. But this is supposed to mark the end of the season. It's confusing. It's confusing. So Cassandra confronts Cassandra demands, since you betrayed our trust, I don't want you to be with Hercules more. And Natalie starts breaking down in tears because now she doesn't really have anyone besides them to at least anchor her for her conflicts with Hades, because a big part is that Hades wants to actually enact his plan, and Natalie's only staying there because she's trying to become an henchman, and because she's ordered by Hades, like, if you want to live here, you got to work for me. All right, baby. All right. Use card. You want this Toyota Corolla? It's missing 2 doors. Sold. $10. And Natalie tries to convey the fact that that she also subtly sabotages Hades and even gives examples. Cassandra is not buying it, and so basically, actually physically assaults her, basically stops it. Natalie realizes that she kind of deserves that. And then Cassandra basically gives her the ultimatum. It's like, give me one good reason why I don't tell Hercules this. Don't tell Hercules any of this. Natalie decides to come clean. She basically begs her, just not even go all the way down to the underworld, just a little cubby that kind of bridges the gap. She brings Cassandra there. She goes back to her room, takes all the stuff she brought in from the real world, goes back to Cassandra and shows Cassandra all the real world as and telling her the truth that in where she's from, she's a real character, and where she's from, Cassandra, Hades, Hercules, everyone is fictional. It's just a made up cartoon. And Cassandra actually doesn't believe this at first until Natalie shows her all the stuff she has from the real world. Her phone, her clothes, her modern makeup and everything. And Cassandra actually starts getting shocked the fact that she's actually telling the truth. And it's even I remember it even there's a little moment where Cassandra the phone is dead, but she kind of messes with the phone and Natalie kind of tells her how it works and everything, and she's just completely shocked. And it leads to Cassandra looking at Natalie and realizing and ask Natalie, okay, tell me everything. And we give it a little cut to where the whole story from Natalie meeting Hades to Ben, and Cassandra just completely flabbergasted over the whole thing because I'm just finding out how much of a she is between a rock and a hard place with this whole deal. It's all right, Natalie, yes, I want you to promise me one thing. Yes, if Hercules finds out any of this, tell him because sooner or later this will come out. You need to tell him. It's all right, I'll tell him. That actually becomes a big thread in season 3 where she keeps trying to work up the courage, and even Cassandra's kind of trying to help Natalie along to build up the courage. But this is when Hades kind of starts being active and basically forcing Natalie's hand because he realizes, okay, you're fucking with me, you keep sabotaging my plans. You're getting involved now, whether you want to or not. Get in the car. But there's no car. Get on Cerberus. Moral of this specific part is it comes out of nowhere. It's such an emotionally charged moment in the story because the rest of the story was just very dull and uninteresting, and then you get this very just 0 to 100% this very emotional moment between Natalie and Cassandra finding out. And I even like the idea of the fact that once the final season happened with the movie, that Cassandra was actually going to become a more prominent part of the movie, kind of inserting herself to kind of help Natalie with everything. I don't know about Icarus, but that's what it sounds like. Icarus is going to be involved in the movie as well. I can't wait to see if the author kind of reworks on this and continues on with it. I don't know for sure. I'm going to assume this is a dead story, but I really did like that moment. I think the everything from Cassandra's anger and disbelief at the betrayal to Natalie breaking down and begging Cassandra for forgiveness. I think that was everything around that was just well balanced and immaculate, done, and all that. So there's that. So the number 5. So interesting thing about number 5, it's from a story that doesn't exist anymore. What do I mean? City. It is from this story. This is the only thing that exists left of this story. And it's kind of sad because I really, really wish the story still existed. Context. There is no context. This story just doesn't exist anymore. And I really, really wanted to review this story. Spoilers, if I did review the story, this would honestly be a Better Off Alone tier story. I think this is bar none the best Yu-Gi-Oh fan fiction ever written. Just no context. Just it was an amazing story. So the plot of the story is this takes place immediately after Total Drama Action. Uh, Chris McLean, wanting to expand the Total Drama franchise to all parts of the world, decides to do a collaboration with the Kaiba Corporation on allowing 6 contestants from the Total Drama that had competed in action to get involved in the Battle City. The goal is simple: if you win the tournament, you get a grand prize of $1 million. If no one wins the tournament, whoever basically makes it farthest gets around $100,000. Spoiler alert: it was Gwen. She becomes the runner-up. She loses the Yami and the finals. So the people that were chosen was actually Heather first, but she declined. That's gonna be important. Gwen, Lashana, Trent, Duncan, Jeff, and Justin, and each of them have a deck. Duncan has a banishment deck that focuses on fiends and banishing cards from either your graveyard or your opponent's graveyard. Justin uses a fire deck. Jeff uses a water deck. Lashana uses a wind deck. Trent uses a warrior deck. And Gwen uses a magician deck. Specifically, a spell counter magician deck. Why am I bringing these decks up? Because it plays into my favorite moment, which is the final turn of Gwen's duel versus Heather. You can actually, I think it should be, right here. Chapter 28. So, it's the Battle City Finals. There are 8 Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters. For those of you who don't know, if you want the context, the characters from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Side are Seto Kaiba, Joey Wheeler, Mai Valentine, Yami Yugi, Isiju Isar, Merrick Ishtar, Odeon, and Bakura. On the Total Drama side, you have these 6 aforementioned characters. You have Heather, who joined the Rare Hunters because it turns out she was actually very bitter about the humiliation she suffered during the events of the Triple Dog Dare Challenge and Total Drama Island, and she basically using the tournament to get revenge on Gwen or whoever. And Courtney shows up, but Courtney gets bodied by Merrick. Don't worry, she's gone. She's there and gone, and like by the end of the chapter, and then she gets sent to the Shadow Realm. Goodbye, Courtney. But what makes this last turn well done? Well, because on paper, it doesn't really make sense. However, if you play Yu-Gi-Oh! As long as I played Yu-Gi-Oh! For 22 years. 20 plus years. This turns from like a nothing moment to a really, really encapsulation of the main theme of the story, which is the division between competitive players and casual players. And this kind of plays a part in, and Heather versus Gwen is basically in a microcosm of that theme. So so the main bulk of the theme is actually centered between Gwen and Kaiba. And trust me, I have to do a lot of setting up because since this story doesn't exist, you can't really read it. So there's that. Kaiba basically feels insulted that the Total Drama characters are basically joining this tournament and they know nothing about the game. They never even heard of the game until they run into Yukimoto and he teaches them. Kaiba sees it as disrespectful to not only his tournament but to the card game as a whole. That a bunch of newbies are just randomly entering a tournament where it's supposed to determine the best of the best of the best. Kaiba represents the competitive side, using the best cards and the best strategies, while the Total Drama crew represent the casual players, basically characters who just get random cards and they just kind of work with what they got. How does that play into Heather versus Gwen? Well, Gwen's deck is a spell counter deck. In essence, spell counters were an early mechanic that Yu-Gi-Oh! Tried to implement in a structure deck, and also periodically throughout the early days and years later, where every time where that counters act as resources for your opponent. In essence, the spell counters are supposed to represent the resource system Magic the Gathering. For those of you who know, Yu-Gi-Oh, especially early Yu-Gi-Oh, was based more off Magic the Gathering. Takahashi basically drew a lot of inspiration from MTG into Yu-Gi-Oh, especially with the art direction stuff at the time. It makes sense in context. All of the Total Drama characters decks can be based on like GOAT format, like 2004, 2005. They were never really super competitive. The most competitive card, honestly, competitive card, not even deck card, and all of them was Duncan's Boss Monster, Caius the Shadow Monarch, which was a Mellow relevant card. However, it got overshadowed by Mobius, but Caius was like the second best Monarch card all that time. What was Heather's deck? Dark Worlds. More specifically, 2007 meta Dark Worlds with all the consistency, all the broken shit, including their boss monster, Grapha, Lord of the Dark World. No, Dragon Lord of the Dark World, because around that time every archetype had a dragon as a boss monster. So why is this relevant? Because this will be like, if you wanted a modern day equivalent, this is like a Thunder Dragon duelist. Thunder Dragon was like a meta relevant card from 2017, 2018, a toss format. Getting Tier Elements, which was a tier 0 deck. Dark Worlds in 2007 was a legitimately top tier deck. This is basically the equivalent of a super sweaty tryhard adult walking up to like a kid with like a pile of 40 cards, 40 random cards, and basically just curb stopping him in like one turn because a kid didn't know how to play. That basically summarizes that entire duel. And even like Kaiba is like completely kind of not like shocked the fact that Heather is using these cards. Is like, wait a minute, these cards they're still being developed. Highlighting the fact that most of her cards, because at this point with the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise, stuff like Dark World wouldn't make absolutely no sense to exist, which kind of breeds the whole competitive aspect, competitive versus casual, where even Kaiba, who is a sweaty tryhard, is completely like thrown for a loop for the simple fact that Dark Worlds just should not exist anymore. Spoiler: it was implied in the story that Heather's cards were counterfeit, fitting the Rare Hunters thing. They all cheated. So we get a lot of back and forth between Gwen and Heather, but Gwen is majorly defensive because of the simple fact Heather's deck was so much better than Gwen's deck that there is barely any, that Gwen was just basically trying to survive. And then we get to the final turn. On Heather's side, we have 5 monsters. We have Gold, Silva, Latium, Lucent, and Grapha. And a whole field. Gwen has no cards in her hand, no monsters on the field, and the only card she has is her field spell, the Magical City of Endymion. Gwen gives up, and she realizes that nothing she has in her deck will actually be able to break this board, because Graph has an effect that it can summon itself as many times as it wants if it's in the graveyard, as long as you bounce a Dark World monster from the field to the hand, so you can just keep bringing it back. Gwen takes her hand and starts to reach for her top of her deck to surrender. And everyone, all her friends, Yugi and everyone, are kind of just trying to get her to like, keep going. And she's ignoring them. And then right before she places her hand on the deck, she hears a voice away from them and tells her, said, "You're a coward." And then she notices it's Kaiba calling her. Kaiba basically tells Gwen, "You're a coward for deciding to surrender." Gwen counters the fact that she really doesn't have anything in her deck that would even have a chance of beating Courtney's field. Kaiba counters by saying that's not what he meant. What he meant is the fact that you're not going out swinging. Basically, Kaiba had a lot of contempt for the Total Drama character because he didn't think their heart was in it and didn't really care much about the game. But then he started hanging out with Gwen and saw that Gwen was different from the one. She was willing to put in the work. She was willing to put in the time to actually and put in the time to be like more than she can be, and actually putting her soul into the cart into the game. And so Kaiba started slowly respecting her for that. Basically, the whole climax of actually this story is Gwen versus Kaiba. Yeah, we know that Yugi's gonna beat Merrick, but the whole climax of the entire story is Gwen versus Kaiba. And this is like that big selling point to tell you, here's what they're fighting for. They're not fighting for any stakes, anything. They are fighting purely for respect. And Kaiba tells Gwen, even if you lose, what you're doing is the coward's way out. If you're going to lose, go down swinging. You never know, that card could be what you need to come back from it. You never know. At least just go down swinging. And even admits to Gwen that she's earned something that only the Pharaoh has actually done. And that's his respect. He actually openly admits to respecting Gwen. And this gives Gwen the kick in the ass she needs. It's like, okay, even if I'm gonna lose, I'm at least going down on my own terms. Like, go down fighting. So Gwen, instead of placing her hand on the top deck, draws a card. She draws Pot of Greed. Allows her to draw 2 cards, but most importantly, allows her to place the final spell counter on the magical city of Endymion. The 2 cards she draws are Endymion, the Master Magician, and Diffusion Wave Motion. Gwen starts to do this whole spiel, talking about how there's even a monster that even the Dark Magician, Yugi's boss monster. Also, I think, if I remember right, the story actually throws a red herring by implying that the Dark Magician was Gwen's boss monster. It's not. It's Endymion. By revealing that the Dark Magician even defaults to the Endymion because he's the Master Magician. And so uses his summoning condition to remove 6 counters from the field spell to allow him to come on the field. And we even get this whole setup where, like, the door, the key, all the pillars around the citadel glow and create a door, and the door slowly opens, and Endymion just slowly walks out and stands behind Gwen like a sentinel. Endymion's effect activates, allowing her to get any spell card from her graveyard onto the field, into her hand. She gets it. Heather basically is like, well, yeah, he only has 27. I'm just crash Grapha into him. I still win. It's like, okay. So I activate Endymion's special effect. Discard a spell card, target 1 monster in the field, destroy it. Heather's like, okay, so I can just literally return to Dark World and do what I'm going to do anyway. Then she says, there is no next turn. Activates Diffusion Wave Motion. At the cost of 1,000 life when she can target a level 7 or higher monster, a spellcaster, Endymion's level 8. Or is it level 7? It's either level 7 or level 8. One of those two. And that allows Endymion to attack all monsters once each. Heather realizes through mental math that by destroying the rest of her monsters, she's going to have no life points. Gwen orders Endymion, take him out. He basically one-shots all of them. Decreases Heather's life points to 0. And then she starts cheering at the fact that she did the impossible. And then everyone kind of joins her, even Kaiba. And we even get like a little moment where Gwen looks at Kaiba, and Kaiba basically is like, it's like, I only did this because I wanted to beat you myself. Something that only I should do to put you in your place. And Gwen immediately kind of realizes that he's kind of like giving her kudos, like in his own Kaiba way. It's a really cool moment. Despite the fact this story is deleted, I still remember this moment fondly because of just how well done a setup. Again, this one only really matters to me because I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh player, so it, it's it's special to me. I just really like it. The whole setup, the little speech that Gwen gives, the whole speech that Kaiba gives. Those are truly anime moment of Gwen sicking Endymion on the rest of her on Heather's field. It's a really well done moment, and I don't really have anything more to say about it. I really wanted to put Gwen versus Kaiba because that's honestly was a really well done duel, but that takes place over the course of 2 entire chapters. I'm not counting that. So yeah, those are 5 big moments that I really liked in fan fictions. Again, if you have any moments that you come across that you really like, mention them in the comments. So this has been Dark Symphony 777, and I'll see you next time.